My name is Joan Fradkin. I used to be a teacher in New York City. I worked with visually impaired students there for most of my career. And I have a son and a daughter. And right now, I have four grandchildren. My father, who was born Fritz Rosenwald, and when he came to America at some point, changed his first name to Fred Rosenwald, was born in Cologne on May 11th, 1915. He was lucky to have come to the United States in 1938, and he tried to bring his sister Lisa Rosenwald to this country, and later on, at various times, his parents to this country. That would have been my grandmother, Johanna Ledermann Rosenwald, and her husband, Carl Rosenwald. However, he was not successful, and sadly, my grandparents and my aunt perished during the Holocaust. Nobody really spoke about the Holocaust. I mean, you'd hear little bits here and there. My mother probably spoke a little bit, but my father uh, did not really talk about the Holocaust. And my brother and I, uh, we didn't really ask questions because we knew it was a very sad topic with him. My father, Fred Rosenwald, did not really know what happened to his parents and sister. He received a letter in the early 60s telling him that his sister, Lisa Rosenwald, was at Stutthof concentration camp in, I believe, Poland. And I assume at that time he put the dots together with that. I didn't find out about his sister until many years later after my father had died when I was doing my research. What exactly happened to her? I also assumed that he probably thought that maybe his father had died during the Holocaust. I don't know how he felt about his mother, but as a child, I always felt that possibly my grandmother and my aunt were alive. You always have hope, but I was wrong with that one. So while I was hoping, my father was probably figuring out in his mind, well, they did not survive. My father kept letters in his file cabinet in the closet of his apartment that he shared with my mom. And they were tied up in two bundles. Uh, and I don't think he read them in years. I don't know for sure, but if he were still on this earth, that would be a question I would ask him. But after my father died, they stayed in the apartment, tied up in these two bundles along with other information. And when my mother passed away, my brother and I inherited them, and they ended up in my apartment. And I had problems because of the emotion that I didn't, well, I felt was in the letters. I, couldn't approach it. I also wanted to know what was in the letters. The letters were primarily written by my grandmother, Johanna Ledermann Rosenwald, and my aunt, Lisa Rosenwald. And through the letters, I basically learned about my big family. I learned about my dad, Fred Rosenwald's efforts to get his family to this country, which were ultimately not successful. And I learned a little bit of what was going on at the time. And the letters were primarily from the 1938 to, I think the last one was at the end of November 1941, before my grandparents and my aunt were deported. And so I had like kind of like a last letter that has been translated into English from my grandmother Johanna. This is unfortunately, this is the way I actually got to know my grandmother and my aunt. And they were very, very nice people. My grandmother was a very loving person. And, you know, my aunt, I learned a lot about my aunt. I didn't know she was engaged. My father never said that. Um, I actually found out the person that she was engaged to. Unfortunately, he also perished during the Holocaust. For me to look at these letters just in the two bundles, but I knew that something had to be done with them, because why would I end up with these letters? And I thought, and my brother thought, that it would be a good choice to donate them. We decided on the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. First of all, I wanted it to be passed down, and I didn't, you know, to people, and uh, I don't want history to repeat itself. And there are lessons to be learned from the letters. You're dealing with, you know, people who were just everyday people, and what they had to endure was horrible. And I thought that my grandparents and aunt and my father would want it passed on. The Holocaust really affected my life in terms of decisions and whatever, and it affected the path of my life. I try to be a fair person. I try to be a person who doesn't rely on stereotypes, and I don't rely on stereotypes. When I meet someone, I look at them for what the individual is, and I think that's very important. So, you know, it's partially due to what went on in my family. I think we have to try to make this world a better place. And that's what I tried to do with my life. And I tried to honor my grandparents and aunt by various choices that I made in life.